Hello and welcome to a very, very disappointing next 15 minutes of your life. I encourage you to stay though, because if you do ever come across this deck, then you'll have less of an aneurysm because you'll know what to expect. We're going to be talking about glue and all kinds of glue. This is probably the most brain-dead deck. It is known as the Hangover deck, True Draco. The idea is, what I have cottoned onto over the years is when this deck had come out, it's so simple and so straightforward that the only thing it requires to operate the deck is to activate the cards. So if you can do that, you can sure as hell do it faced. I promise you. So we'll get into it and we'll explain why. But as I say, over the years, you notice that the people who tend to play this deck were the people who drank a full bottle of rum last night. So, and at the bottom of the bottle, they realised, oh, God, I've got to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the morning. How am I going to do this? Well, we'll get into it. So we start off with Amano-Iwato. Some people main Inspector border, so I'm going to have to throw that out there. Thunder King Ryo is a nice little thing. The idea is that it is just a normal summon to irritate your opponent. Now, the reason I've opted for Amano, especially, is because it is called by the grave on legs. You normal summon this out, and the True Draco cards allow you to get extra normal summons through their face-up spells. So you don't mind using your normal summon on something degenerate, like Amano or Fossil Dino, or whatever you fancy doing to irritate your opponent. It's fine. The less work for you, the better. So Amano is just, it's skill drain on legs. So going first, your opponent can't hand trap you while you set up. So then when they're going into your board, it is completely full of very degenerate and unfair floodgates. Going second, if your opponent has activated, set up an entire board of negation, you normal summon this card, and none of them can activate, unless they're negating the summon of this card. In which case, they can activate, but it's Denko Sekka for monsters, so it's really good. So, for the True Draco monsters, we genuinely only play 6, so in total the deck monster count is only 9. So the first one is Dynamite Knight. You need to play it at 3 because it sets up all the traps. The traps modulate attack points. Usually that would be terrible, but it comes up too much, and the traps it set up pop monsters. So they are the most important ones, especially in a combo format, or when people are using aggro strategies. And then Ignis is the next best. You need to play it at 3 as well, because it gets all the spells, which is Pot of Avarice and Pot of Greed practically attached to all the spells. So they all have their nice little cool things attached to the continuous spells and traps, but trust me, this deck is as brain dead as I'm making it sound. So that is literally it. All of the monsters. So then we have Dragonic Diagram. It's a 1 for a reason. This deck can't ever be too consistent because, again, it can be pretty unfair when it gets going. Trust me. And obviously you need Terraforming to search Dragonic Diagram. Now, the killer with Dragonic Diagram is nobody reads it. So, your True Draco cards get 300 attack when it's activated. That's permanent. So any True Draco or True King monster that is summoned gets a 300 boost. And obviously it can pop a card to then search any True Draco or True King card from the deck, right? That is the bit your opponent reads. The next bit is that the True Dracos, if they were to be destroyed by battle, right, the first time they wouldn't. So the amount of times I've seen people just summon out something that is perfectly 2-7 or 2-8 and just gone crash, and I'm like, cool, nothing happens. It's a card that goes really under the radar. It's a bit like Stromberg. So then we have Heritage. This is the Pot of Greed. It gives you an extra normal summon per turn, and when it's popped, or when it leaves the field, it can destroy a spell or trap card. So it sounds broken, but trust me, it really isn't, because it only gets this Pot of Greed for the types of cards that had left the field that turn. So if a True Draco spell has left the field, that's 1 card you can draw. If a True Draco monster has left the field, that's 2. If a True Draco trap, so forth. Like, you could end up drawing 3 off of this. It is rare. And then you play 3 Disciples. It is just a miniature Avarice. This is so the deck never decks out. You could just constantly put back all your resources while you're cycling through. So you just target 3 True Draco cards, with different names and just put them back into your deck and draw a card. And then for the traps, you play True Draco Apocalypse. This is the best engine card of the deck. So you destroy another face-up True Draco card to halve all of your opponent's monsters' attacks permanently, which allows your not so massive True Dracos to just beat over anything that would have been a problem. And yeah, when it leaves the field, you get to destroy a monster. We play one return. So the reason you play one return is it's very heavily searchable. You'd want to open it a pairing with the Apocalypse, but you can just use Apocalypse to pop Apocalypse and then pop a monster. But you can also just have True King's Returns. You pop True King's Return off of Apocalypse, you get a pop off one of the monsters, and if your Apocalypse leaves the field that turn as well, you get a double pop, because again, there are once per turns attached to these cards, thank God. Yeah, True King's Return occasionally crops up. You can recur back your monsters by reborning them in defense position. But other than that, it is just a one-off. It doesn't do anything more. And that is the brain dead part of the deck. Now we get into the glue. Time-Tearing Morganite. So, if you do get to turn 3, and that is a big if, especially if you're going second, your opponent loses. Because every turn you get to draw 2 cards, which ends up becoming ridiculous for this deck because it can already search everything in general, especially with the monsters that can just chain their effects to what your opponent's doing to then set up cards. So yeah, if this resolves, your opponent is not in a good position. If it doesn't resolve, I don't know what to tell you. You're losing. So it's big risk, high reward, but it was never a reward that you were getting anyway. So if you get that far, then good on you. Duality. We need consistency in this deck. It's really good. You just activate the top 3 cards of your deck. You add 1 to your hand. Basic as that. Lovely card. And it locks you into special summoning, but guess what? We don't do any of that. And what you see here is a Card of Demise. I promise you, you're not deceived. This is a Card of Demise. You just load up all of your glue, which we're getting into, and you load up all your combo, and then you just activate Demise at the end and draw an extra 3 cards, because why the hell not? It's mostly 2 cards. A lot of people ash this one, so it's all right if you've already got like a nice bit of glue already set up for your opponent, and then they just ash this, and it's like, all right, well, that's okay. Like, it's at 1, and it needs to stay at 1. It never comes back. So, and then we get into the glue. Skill Drain. Your opponent doesn't have monster effects. Neither do you, but you don't care. Like, that's fine. You activate Skill Drain, you win. Alright? And because I heard a Rise Heart has just been banned, we play Soul Drain. So, the graveyard decks that come back into format, and the banish-based decks, you just have Soul Drain, which says no. Like, so you don't get the graveyard, you don't get banish, you don't get monster effects. And with the consistency of this deck, sometimes setting up both of these at the same turn is just not that implausible. It is really easy. We obviously play Tikaboo. I understand this is a worm deck, but you can pick and choose when this stays up on the field. I don't think you understand like how, like, this is an FTK against a lot of decks. It's the predominant one. Obviously, your side rivalry. You don't really want to play Gozen Match because that is too locky for you. So yeah, you side rivalry, your main deck there can be only one. Main deck in rivalry is also fine. It's just a bit of a risk. There are some decks that go under the radar with Tikaboo, but Tikaboo, as a general rule of thumb, Sword Soul, Salamangre, like a lot of decent, like under the radar strategies. It's just an FTK against them. Plants, yeah, it's really good. So, and then finally, for the last 3, Dogmatika Punishment. This, in a card, is, I don't like what you've set up. I'm going to destroy that, and either draw, pop more things, return things that I couldn't usually pop, recur back my resources that have been banished or sent to the grave, or just send a card that says I can draw anyway. So, or an impermanence. You can send an impermanence off of this. It's quite rare. We'll get into the other aspect of the extra deck. Just being able to play this in general I think makes it entirely worth it. More than the Erupt build or the Dominion build. I know that you could choose not to play an extra deck and play Monarch's Dominion or Erupt, just so they can't either have an extra deck or that you've got extra copies of Skill Drain. I genuinely would rather play this or be able to play this over being able to play Dominion. Like, it's that good. So the extra deck, sadly, again, like, it's only just become a really important asset to this deck. It is very bare bones. We have Elder Entity Entis. It pops a card when it's sent to the grave. Brilliant. You could play Dogmatika in this deck, but again, it eats up a lot of room, and then it can be quite cloggy. But I do like it, so it does work. Garura. It draws a card when it's sent to the grave. Common theme here. So the reason we're playing all of these cards in the extra deck that get pluses off when they're sent to the grave is not only because of punishment, but you're obviously going to take advantage of Ultimate Slayer. You can activate Ultimate Slayer. It will just send one. So I'll line up what you can send. We will obviously go through these from the extra deck to the grave, to then spin one card your opponent controls on the field to their extra deck again, and then you gain an additional plus when these are sent to the grave. So if they control a Synchro, you send Malong, and then Malong gets to return one straight to the hand. If for some reason you got a card that you... So, So you got Entis pops, Garura draws. Malong is a compulsory evacuation device. So you just target a card on field and return it to the hand. Donna, if you got a card that's banished and you just want to recur it back, you send Donna and you just get the card back from banished. And then you have Omega. Not a lot of people know about its second effect, which is pretty crazy. The idea is that you target a card in grave, including itself, so you can keep on looping Omega to eventually just put your entire deck back. Like, I've genuinely had it where I've put back over 10 cards in a game. Not using this deck, but just from using Omega constantly being able to loop itself. Especially with cards like Dogmatika Maximus, or just keep looping Punishment. Yeah, you could just end up putting your entire deck back with this thing on paper. So it's really good. Aggregator is an imperm. It is just in case your opponent controls an XYZ that is particularly annoying, and then you might as well just imperm the thing as well. Another thing on field. And then we have Bucephalus, which its only job is to send Garura. So this has synergy with Ultimate Slayer. So if your opponent controls a pesky link that you need to get rid of, you send Bucephalus, and then you'd rather get the preferred effect that you would have had off of Garura, because it just gets to send Garura to the grave. And the last card, because Garura is also a Super Poly target, we would play Super Poly in the side. So we play a copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. 2 darks, it doesn't matter. You can increase your Super Poly engine if you want by playing Draco Stapelia, or you can play Mud Dragon of the Swamp. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just a nice, condensed, compact engine for Ultimate Slayer, Dogmatika Punishment, like, again. And the only reason you can't play Prosperity in this deck, really, is because of Morganite. You could choose to play Prosperity over Morganite. It's just because the Morganite's permanent. You're constantly getting pluses off of it. Why I choose to do that. So, as I say, this is the most brain-dead deck the game has ever seen. I do not condone anybody, play this. I do not advocate for its existence. I hate this deck. And yet I am one of those people who will play it if I got too drunk last night. So, bottom line is, it's just stun, but quite consistent and pretty... When it goes off, it seems unstoppable, but I am not saying this deck is any bit good in any sense of the word. So, tell me what you think of the deck. Obviously, swear at me, shout at me, comment awful, mean things to me. Tell me how much of an evil human being us Draco players and I am. So, let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends about this crap if you want to. I feel like an awful human being already. So, I'll see you next time.